and welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. I am your host, Kara R. Hunt, and with me is the wonderful Sherry Swalwell. How are you today, Sherry?
I am doing great. And you know what? I am loving February. I can't believe we're in the third week of it already, but I am loving it. Last week, we talked about David and Bathsheba, and we were talking about if you find yourself in a lustful situation or a lustful relationship. And we were encouraging people to get out while you can. And it made me think, I was thinking about a phrase that my pastor encouraged his congregation or all of us with. And he was talking about how we're always only one choice away from changing our life for the better or for the worse. And I think that that goes so good with not just what we were talking about last week with David and Bathsheba, but I think it goes really well with our topic for today, that lust is an emotion. Just like, so you can lust after food, you can lust after people, you can lust after sex, you can lust after money, you can lust after fame, you can lust after a lot of different things. And
lust after power?
Yeah. And we're all only one choice away from giving into that or running away from that. And I just thought, oh, that is so good. I remembered what my pastor had said. And so I just kind of wanted to share that today, that it's another encouragement that you may find yourself down that rabbit hole, but you're only one choice away, one good choice away from pulling yourself out of that. So I don't know, it encouraged me. And so I just kind of wanted to encourage you and our listeners today that we're all only one choice away from changing our life, either for the better or for the worse.
Absolutely. And I actually remember when I was in high school that there was a play, and it was called Choices, right? And of course, it was high school students in a play. And our drama, my favorite drama teacher of all time. So a shout out to Dr. Deborah Peppers, and everything else. So because as an adult, she became a friend, right? And someone who I always looked up to and admired and everything else. But there was a skit. Well, I can't say skit. Let me just say play. But called Choices. And I remember, I think that was, now we're in high school at this time. Well, let me just speak for me. I'm in high school at this time. And I think it was that play that really hit it home for me about how the choices we make can change our lives in ways we never thought they could. Now, of course, the play focused more on, things that high school students get themselves involved in, like drinking and driving, unplanned pregnancies, hanging out with people who may have drug issues or promote drug issues or encourage you to do drugs. And it was like so many 4, 5, 6, 7 main people in this play, and each one of them made choices to go down, certain roads. And then, there was like 1 or 2, if I remember correctly, that didn't choose to go down any of those bad roads. And you get to see, like, later how those choices affected each one of them. So your pastor's absolutely right. And you're absolutely right. That is just something that we need to always remember, that we're just one choice away from not just a very bad day, but from a very bad life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds like that was a really good play.
Oh, it was eye-opening for me. It was, because, I think when you're a teen, you just don't quite see big picture like that.
Right.
Because you're just like, oh, I'll just have this one beer, or I'll just take this one drink, or I'll just smoke this one joint and get behind a car. Nothing's going to happen. I'm just going to go home. Yes, exactly. I'm invincible. Nothing's going to happen. Come on, guys, everybody get in the car. We're going to have a blast. We're going to go barreling down Main Street, even though we're high as kites, right? And then when you're the only survivor at the end of that road, and then now you're facing prison time for manslaughter charges for killing people and getting behind the wheel of a car, knowing that you were what do they call it? Um, not incarcerated. That's when you go to jail. Um, oh, what is the word when you're just anyway?
Right,
you're too drunk.
Yeah,
Intoxicated. That's the word I'm looking for.
Go.
I know it began with an I, you know, and you're intoxicated. You can barely see in front of you, let alone the lines on the street, let alone the car, the child, the old lady in front of you, let alone the stop sign. And then you crash into another car. Not only kill the people in your vehicle, but in maybe seriously injure or harm someone else in there. As a child, as a teenager, you know, we don't think big picture like that. So that was one of those plays that just really made it hit home for me. Like, wow, you know, we can't just be so loosey goosey with our decisions and the people we hang out with, or the people we spend time with, or the things we do, because it could really, really become a stumbling block in the plans that, you know, I have for my life, you know, and it does. So yes, it was, and you know, as we'll see, as Sherry's going to talk about, one of the choices that Samson made, wow, you know, I'm just going to say wow, and the way it ended, wow, and it was all because of a beautiful girl named Delilah. So Sherry, did you want to just give us a quick summary on that, or even just talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been reading through the Bible with two other ladies, and I actually read through Samson in December. And I love. Okay, so first off, I'm going to backtrack on my own self here. You can never read the Bible too many times. You can never read the same passage too many times. The Bible is a living, breathing word of God, and it will speak to you differently each time you read it. And I dare say you will hear and see and find new things every time you read it. Not that they weren't there the first time, but it's kind of like that whole Volkswagen thing. Like if you're buying a Volkswagen, then all you see are Volkswagens on the road. If you're buying a Nissan, then all you see are Nissans on the road. They were always there before, but now all of a sudden you think that that's all that there is because that's what you're looking for. So it's not that the words change, but it's that you change. And that as God is changing you, you'll see, and different parts will jump off the page at you that didn't jump off before. So you'll find the story of Samson in Judges. His birth starts in Judges 13, and the whole story of Samson gets wrapped up in by Judges 16. So first off, so Samson was born to this couple who didn't have kids before, and they were given very, very strict instructions about how he was to be raised. He was not allowed to have his hair touched by a razor. He was not allowed to eat anything that had grapes with it. He was not allowed to drink any wine, no fermented drink at all. He couldn't eat anything unclean. God was very, very specific about what his mom needed to do when she was pregnant and how they needed to raise him. And his supernatural strength came from God through his long hair. So as long as his hair was never cut, he would have this supernatural strength. Well, Samson was not necessarily a man after God's own heart. He was not like David, who grew up and wanted to serve God. He was someone who became very prideful. I get the impression that he was very physically fit. He was very handsome. He was somebody that was attractive to all the ladies, and he knew it. Well, he deliberately did things that he wasn't supposed to do. Like, for instance, when he killed this lion with his bare hands, then he came back a couple months later or a couple weeks later, and there was honey inside the carcass. He scooped out the honey and started eating it. God said no. He said, you're not allowed to touch unclean things. You're not, and a carcass is an unclean thing. So he deliberately, like, almost like looked at God and said, neener, 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 I'm going to do what I want to do type of a thing. Well, I had totally missed, when I think of the story of Samson and Delilah, I totally missed the fact that Samson was married at one point before he even met Delilah. So he was married to this lady, and then he went off and he did whatever he wanted to do. And then he came back, and the father-in-law said, "No, you can't have her now. You went off, you didn't want her, so no, you can't have her." Well, then something happened. I don't remember exactly, but I think she ended up getting killed or dying somehow. Well, then he ends up with Delilah. And Delilah, I don't think he ever married her. I think he just basically had sex with her and had adultery with her. And so she was in cahoots with like the bigwig people who were trying to kill Samson. And I mean, he's an idiot. He's an absolute complete idiot who was being ruled by lust, because she asked him time and time again, "What is it that is your strength?" Well, he would lie to her. He would say, if you tie me up with a rope that's never been, like a young rope of some kind or whatever. Well, then of course they tied him up and he broke out of it. You would think he would learn after the first or second time. You would think he would get it in his head. She's trying to kill me. But no, he doesn't get it. So finally, because she nags him and nags him and nags him and nags him,
That's so funny.
he finally tells her the truth. Well, then he gets caught because they cut his hair. He has no strength, but he's the idiot. Like, seriously. And like, you can't make up this stuff, and it's better than a soap opera. Like, you're screaming at the TV. You are such an idiot. Why are you doing this? But yet he does it anyway. And so then he ends up getting his eyes gouged out. They take him as a prisoner, but his but his hair eventually grows back. And so he asks at the very end of the story, he says, "God, will you just give me?" He finally gets it. So I kind of think he will be in heaven, because I think he finally did humble himself and surrender himself to God. I don't know for sure. That's just my opinion from reading it. You read it, and then you tell me what you think too. But it finally gets to the end of his life. He says to God, "Will you give me one more chance to do what you had told me to do, to be obedient to you?" God says yes. He ends up being asked to go out in the middle of this like arena temple thing where all these bad people are having this meeting. He pushes the pillars away. The house comes crashing down, or the temple, or what the building that they're in comes crashing down. He ends up dying at the same time as everybody else. So it's kind of a suicide mission. And he ends up finally, I think, fulfilling the mission that God had for him to begin with. Although I don't quote me on that part. I don't know if he was technically supposed to kill all those people, like if that was God's purpose in his life. But I do believe that he, at the end of his life, he was humbled. He realized that it was God that gave him the strength, and he redeemed himself that way. But yes, I mean, like, you read the story, and as you're reading it, I myself am going, "You're such an idiot. I cannot believe that you think that this girl is for you when she's not." So he's being ruled by lust instead of being ruled by a brain. And that is Sherry's version of Samson.
And that's a good summary of it, because again, like we in the previous two episodes where we give like biblical scriptures about lust, and so please go back to those previous episodes and have a pen and paper ready, and in that way you can write down the scriptures that talk about lust, and and what Samson was dealing with, at the time. But Sherry was right. It's as though his parents knew. Well, no, Samson knew too. He knew why he was created. Created. He knew what his life was supposed to be about. That's why he had all these rules and restrictions. But he was just like so full of himself, right? And he was just so full because he had this great strength, and everything else. And like Sherry said, the strength was in his hair. And people just don't like that he was like pretty much invincible, especially the enemies of his people. So he, like Sherry said, you see Delilah just come into his life. And of course, she's offered all this money to bring him down to find out the secret to his strength. And like Sherry said, after the first couple of times, you're like, dude, don't you get it? She's not your friend, right?
Exactly.
She's out to get you. She is out to destroy you. And she's getting paid to do it. Okay? But no, again, so enthralled by lust, he can't see straight.
Exactly.
He can't see straight. He can't see what was right in front of him. He couldn't see that he was being manipulated and everything else until, he wakes up with his hair cut off. And he's like, what have you done? And then it's too late, right?
Mhm.
Then it's too late.
I'm like, you're such an idiot. Like, she told you she was going to do that. Why are you surprised?
Right? Why are you surprised? Did you think she was so in love with you or something that she wasn't going to try to take you down?
Exactly.
Like, no, she wasn't. And she knew how this was going to end for you. And all you did was lollygag over her and her beauty and all of that stuff. And you pretty much signed your own death warrant, and that's what he did. Every time he allowed her into his tent, he had signed his death warrant. She was getting closer and closer each time to getting rid of his existence is what she was doing.
Right.
She was not his friend. She was out to get him. She was plotting against him. But did she just, come right up and, well, yeah, she did. She did just come right out and tell him. But he thought she was joking.
Or
when people show you who they are.
Yeah.
Huh?
Oh, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm saying when people show you who they are, believe them.
Right.
Right. But you know why he couldn't see it? He was blinded by lust, that carnal desire to want something that you're not supposed to have or be in or be involved with. But he didn't get it. Just like we talked about Bathsheba and David a couple of weeks ago. So it was this whole month of February we were discussing the topic of love versus lust. And it, just like with King David, he didn't see it until the prophet of the Lord came to him and helped point it out of what he was into and the things that he had done. And just like Samson, it wasn't until he was imprisoned pretty much, right? They either had him in a prison or a cage or, jail, well, bars, behind bars or something, or something. And wasn't it like some type of mock court that they were having, like pretending like there was going to be some justice, but it really wasn't? They were going to kill him. Oh, I know what it was. That wasn't what it was. They brought him there for everybody to see that they got him, right? To mock him,
right.
To laugh at him.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, to mock him and to laugh at him and is this the mighty guy who broke the jaws of the lion and everything else? Well, look at him now. He's in a cage and everybody's all laughing at him and mocking him and and everything else. But here's the thing. They were also mocking his God witness, right? They were also mocking that because I'm pretty sure his enemies knew that his strength was from God above, the God of Israel, right? And now here you are, you didn't let yourself all into a situation to where not only were you being mocked, but also the God of Israel is being mocked. And he's had enough. And he knows it's not going to end well for him anyway. He was pretty much as good as dead regardless, right? And there are all these people in this arena or wherever it was. I can't say for sure it was an arena, but it was this place, right? And he asked, now he's seeking God. Now that he sees the error of his ways, right? And he's like, he goes and stands between the pillars when he's still chained. And he's still chained, but he's able to get between two pillars that were actually apparently holding the place up. And his strength returns. He calls out to God. His strength returns, and he's able to push those pillars or something, shake those pillars or something until the whole place just caved in. And no more people, no more Samson. But you know what I find interesting? It doesn't say Delilah was among those people. Does it, Sherry, or am I missing something?
I don't think so. I don't remember reading that. I never thought about
Mhm.
that part.
Right. So here's this woman who you lusted after, knowing that you were in the wrong, who you lusted after, who pretty much plotted and planned your demise from the moment you met her. You entertained her. You took her into your bed. You had fun with her. You pleasured her. She pleasured you. Now you're dead. And so are the people who paid her. But she could still alive somewhere, possibly enjoying her life. You were just another person, another man that she hung out with. You know, you weren't that special to her. It doesn't. The scriptures doesn't talk about how she was outside the arena or something, and she was crying and sobbing and repentant of what she did. It's just no. There's none of that. And she could have done it to many more men for various reasons. And that's cold-hearted. Do you really want less to take you to a place where you're just that cold-hearted about something? I mean, even for goodness sakes, even Judas was sorry for what he did. He hung himself. He hung himself for betraying Jesus. For betraying Jesus. But it says nothing about Delilah being repentant at all. Or even like, wow, I didn't know all that was going to happen, but it is what it is. You know, so you let yourself get tied up with these people who only want your demise and could care less if something happens to you, like literally care less, and will not lose a wink of sleep about it at night. That's how far less would take you. What did you want to add to that, Sherry?
Well, the other thing that I keep thinking about between Bathsheba and Delilah. Now, Bathsheba and Delilah were very different people. I don't think that Bathsheba had a mean bone in her body. So I have to preface that with what I'm going to say. And I also don't think that beauty is an issue either. I think the issue comes in when we focus more on the outward appearance of a person than on their inside. So when you think about Boaz and you think about Ruth might have been very pretty. I have no idea. She might have been beautiful, but Boaz didn't focus on the beauty on the outside. He focused on the beauty on the inside. She was taking care of her mother-in-law. She was selfless. She was giving. So I think I know a lot of people, and we're both women, so we're not going to judge women by any means. But I mean, I don't think we would judge. We're not judging anybody, to be honest with you. But there are some people that are like, well, if they didn't dress that way, or they didn't act that way, or they didn't do this, they brought it on themselves. No, I'm not going there by any means. But what I do want to bring out is that lust is a selfish desire that you are feeding. And you're looking at the outward appearance of a person. Now, Delilah had a nasty, evil, ugly heart. Bathsheba, I really don't think she did. It doesn't sound like it from the scriptures. So if David David really should have just stayed away because she was married and he was married and they weren't married to each other. So David was just completely in the wrong there. But
and Bathsheba wasn't even enticing him because she thought, like you say, he was away at war. So she wasn't even trying to entice or seduce him. She was just doing her own thing, minding her own business, staying in her own lane.
Exactly. And he came into her lane and he was completely 100% wrong. And I don't think Bathsheba did anything wrong. She even obeyed the king, even knowing that she didn't want to, that she was married and happily married to Uriah. But I think that, I guess, and maybe I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this, but because it just kind of came to me. But I think that we need to focus on the inward appearance of other people. And I know, like, for me, okay, I think my husband's amazingly handsome. And that's the truth. But I do think that for women, I think that we're attracted to the outward appearance of a man, but I think that they become even more handsome and even more attractive to us the more we get to know their heart. And I think that I can't speak for men, but I think that that's kind of what we need to focus on, is that we focus on the inward aspects of people. But also, you want to be attracted to the outside, but not let that outside rule or take over your brain.
That is so true, because you can end up married to the most gorgeous person you ever met and, be miserable.
And rue the day that you did it.
Right? And rue the day that you did it. And I think one day a girlfriend, we were just talking about our husbands or whatever, and she was like, "So your husband, when you first met him, like, what was one of the things that just really made you excited to be with him? Like, you just knew that he was someone you wanted to get to know." And I said, "Confidence." Right? Because to me, I don't care how good looking you are, and this is a Kara thing. I don't care how good looking you are. You could be the next, imagine the most handsome person that you could think of. He could be that person. But if you don't have confidence, then to me, I don't find that attractive. If I could say that in a nice way, right?
Yeah.
Wishy-washy men, right? Or I think I can do this, or I may be able to do this. I don't know. You could probably do it better. It's like, that's just not my type, right? So, and I was like, confidence. And that is so key. You got to find things in people. And we've been together I was going to say over 30 decades. Over 30 years, and because he also evidently found something in me, right? That was more steadfast in just the way that I looked or that he looked on the outside. And I was just reading this morning, I believe, and I didn't even think about this, right? But they were talking about the Proverbs 31 woman, and it talks about they shared all the things that the woman in the scripture, Proverbs 31 woman is how she's often referred to, or the virtuous woman, and it highlights all of the things that the book of Proverbs talk about that a woman should be, right? Virtuous, industrious, and all these things.
I completely agree with you, Kara. There are so many things about the Proverbs 31 woman, but they do not describe her physically. She is not described physically. That is not the thing that God cares about the most. And there's a Bible verse that talks about that, where it talks about that God looks on the inside and not on the outside. And I think it's very ironic, but that verse, it talks about in 1 Samuel, and it talks about when it talks about, because David was the least likely to be the king. He had all these brothers before him. He was either the 10th or the 11th brother. He had all these brothers before him, and Eli came to Jesse, David's dad, and said, this one. Or no, actually, sorry. Jesse came to Eli and said, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? What about this one? And Eli was like, nope, nope, nope. Do you have another son? And he said, yes, I do. But you don't want him. He's David. He's in the field as a shepherd. And he said, no, God doesn't look at the outside. He looks at the heart. So I completely agree with you, Kara, that with the Proverbs 31 woman, her physical appearance was never once described. It was all the inward qualities that she had that made her the Proverbs 31 woman.
Absolutely. And it was like her, yeah, and they had mentioned that, and I'm going, wow, how many times have I read that scripture throughout my life and never noticed that? It doesn't talk about what her hair looked like. It doesn't say how attractive she was or wasn't. For all we know, she could have been overweight. Right? She may have been unattractive. She may, all the things that most men probably just look past, right? People, the invisible women, right, to men. But all of that, it doesn't say. Or she could have just been the most beautiful man they had ever seen. It doesn't say. It only talks about her qualities as a person. And I think that's what you were trying to say, Sherry, in regarding Ruth, Bathsheba, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Delilah. You know, get to know that person on the inside before you tie yourself up with them, whether that be mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, or sexually. Before you get tied up with that person, and especially if you're not married to them, you shouldn't be doing that last part at all, especially as a believer, as a Christian. But don't allow yourself to get tied up with that person, because if you don't know them on the inside, then you're just opening the door for trouble. You know, people are constantly talking about, oh, I don't like drama. I don't want drama. But yet you have someone in your life that's nothing but drama, or is going to lead to drama for you for possibly generations to come, as we find out with King David and Bathsheba. Like Sherry said, Boaz looked at the inner workings of Ruth. David didn't get to know Bathsheba. He just took her.
Yeah.
He just wanted her. He just told his man to go get her, and then he enjoyed himself with her. Enjoyed her in his bed. They brought him to the palace or the castle or whatever, the king's palace or whatnot, and then he just enjoyed himself with her. He didn't get to know her. He knew nothing about her, but she didn't have a chance to say no. Regardless, if she did, she could have ended up dead. And
Right.
then you have Samson, and then you have Delilah. You know, all the red flags were there for Samson. That she was not a good person. He just chose not to pay attention to them because he was enjoying her. Maybe it was just her company. Maybe he just enjoyed looking at her, her beauty, and he just really, 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 really enjoyed that, and everything else. But it really, once you read more into that story, really seems like there was definitely a lot more going on between him and Delilah, things that he should not have been able to get into. But he didn't take the time. He let lust blind him to the point to where he didn't know that she was planning his demise until it was too late. Until it was too late. Get to know the person. Don't let yourself get involved in these entanglements. But I think it's very important these entanglements, that can only lead to your demise, whether it be mental, physical, or otherwise. The enemy is planning to take you out, and sometimes he doesn't even have to work that hard. He could just send a beautiful woman your way, as it shows in Samson and Delilah, or he could send a handsome man your way. Someone who looks exactly like you thought your mate should look like, or he could send something your way, because as Sherry mentioned, lust just doesn't have to do with people. You can be lusting after a thing. You can be lusting after power, money, some other type of gratification that will ultimately give you the same consequences as if you were lusting after a person. Different type of consequences, but you will still have them. They will still be there. Am I right, Sherry?
Absolutely. And I think it all boils down, in all honesty, to trust. Do we trust God? Do we trust God that he has the right person for us at the right time? Do we trust God that all the red flags are there, but we're going to ignore them because we want to be married right now, because we want to be in a relationship right now, because it's Valentine's Day, and who wants to be single and alone on Valentine's Day? I cannot stress enough, do not settle. Do not settle for second best. Don't settle for a hot dog when God has a steak. Don't settle in your life, especially in the huge areas of career and spouse. You can change pretty much anything in your life except for your spouse. And by that, I mean, I don't know how many people that I have talked to and how many people that have shared with me that, well, this isn't the spouse. I should never have married so-and-so. I should have never gotten married to so-and-so. Well, guess what? So-and-so is now the best husband for you because you are married. You married under God. You married under, his blessing and his covenant. And you are married. So now guess what? this person is the best person for you. And you don't have to be subjected to living a life of misery. God does not expect that. God does not ask that of you. God is the God of restoration. God is the God of reformation. God is the God of healing. God can make the marriage that you have that you think is a mistake, and he can turn it into one of the best marriages ever. I just finished reading a fantastic book by a couple who are associated with Family Life Radio. It is called Sex on the First Date. Now, I know that's a really weird title, but it talks about how they made so many mistakes in their life, but they never gave up. And when they finally committed their lives to Christ, he transformed their lives so radically that people did not even recognize them as the same people. So God can heal, God can restore, God can redeem anything. So to those people out there who think that they're married to the wrong person because they made a mistake, they jumped in too quick, they got married just because they didn't want to be alone, there is hope. There is hope. God is the God of restoration, and he can redeem what you consider a mistake, and he can turn it into one of the best things in your life. There is hope. So is there anything else you want to say, or should I wrap it up and we come back next week and talk about Mary and Joseph?
I'm good. I just highly, highly encourage all of our listeners to go back and really read through these stories and decipher for yourself. Was this a love action when Boaz did this? Was that a love action when Ruth did that? Oh my goodness, when David did this, was that love or was that lust? And when Bathsheba acquiesced, was that love or was that lust? And I use the word acquiesce loosely because she had no choice, And with Samson, go back and definitely read that story because definitely, like I said, definitely go back and read that story. And while you're reading it, take note of all the red flags that he should have acknowledged, but he didn't. And take note of why he wasn't supposed to do those things, why his hair was not supposed to get cut. And then take note of Delilah's actions and see if you agree with Sherry. Like, Samson, come on now. By this point, you should know better that this woman is out to get you, right? Go through those, point out all of the, start a love column and a category and then a lust category, and then just write in there the things that you think, fall into each category, because it really just brings us closer to see God. He may have all these rules and regulations for us, but it's only for our benefit, because as you read in his stories, whether it was love or whether it was lust, which ones ended up well? And of course, you can, when you tune back in next week with Joseph versus Mary, you'll see the same thing. Sherry, did we give the scriptures where Samson and Delilah can be found?
Yes, but I'll give them again. That's a great thing. We started in Judges 13, and it goes through Judges 16. So it's only 3 chapters. It's not that long at all. And the other thing that I want to reiterate with Kara, or piggyback on what Kara said, is when you go back and you read this for yourself, ask the Holy Spirit to show you what he wants to teach you from it. And then just be open to what he wants to share. Because like I said, when I read this one again in December, I have read the story of Samson many times over my life. I never realized he had been married before Delilah. I was like, what? So read it slowly, read it carefully. Maybe read 1 chapter a day from now until next week. Or, spoiler alert, if you don't want to do that, if you'd rather read about Mary and Joseph first so that you have a better idea, I would suggest reading the story in Luke, because Luke is the one I think that gives the most detail. And you could actually read both about Samson and Delilah and Mary and Joseph, because Mary and Joseph is only, it starts in Luke 1, and then it only goes to, well, if you only want to read through before he's born, you can read just the first chapter, but if you want to read through after he's born, then you could even just read chapters 1 and 2, and that talks about his birth, his conception, his birth, and then when he's like a 12-year-old boy. So it's like, seriously, 2 or 3 chapters for Mary and Joseph, 2 or 3 chapters for Samson. Doesn't take that long, but reading it for yourself just opens it up and just gives it a much better, just gives the Holy Spirit an opportunity to share with you and to show you what it is that he wants you to learn. So if there is something that you want to talk to us about, you can email us at cheeruppodcast@gmail.com. We would be happy to pray with you. We would be happy to encourage you. Whatever it is that you need, reach out to us. We love the people and the communications that we get, and we try to answer every single email. If you want to join the community, the Cheer Up Podcast community, head over to Facebook. You can join us on our Facebook group, Cheer Up Podcast. Kara's website is Kara R. Hunt, KARARHUNT.com. Go check out all that she's got going on over there. And you can also check out some things that are going on in my life at SherrySwalwell.com. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of February was my devotional Sisters in Christ, which is available on Amazon, was turned into a YouVersion Bible study on the YouVersion app.
Oh, yes, right.
And that was called,
so exciting.
That is called Build Your Own or Build Your Sister in Christ Community. So if you want to find that out on YouVersion, you can read the free version there. And then if you want to, you can then buy the full devotional, which goes into much more detail and unpacks a lot more things on Amazon. So I'd forgotten to talk about that, but that's out on YouVersion if you're interested in that as well. And I would love for you to join the membership, Jesus in the Everyday, and just join that community that we have going on as well. So have a great rest of your week. Have a fantastic day. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to Samson and Delilah. And next week we will be talking about Mary and Joseph. Have a great week.